Howdy folks, Dave here at Thunder Mesa Studio. I hope you're having a warm and wonderful holiday season. I hope you also enjoyed that little montage just now of last year's Christmas project. That was the build of my HO scale Santa Fe and St. Nick Railroad. I put the whole thing together in about 6 weeks last year, November and December, with a focus on materials and kits and techniques that were readily available, so to make it more accessible to people who are just getting started in the hobby. And if you missed any of that series or would just like to watch it again, I'll put a link to the entire playlist so you can check it out. Now, the first thing I wanted to do this year with the layout was to find or build a better stand for it. The table I made for it last year was always a little bit wobbly, to be honest. It worked fine during construction, but I really want something more solid. So first thing we're going to do is fix that problem. Now, fortunately, I found I already had a stand in storage too from when I moved the old studio. And it's built to the same sturdy specifications as the supports that I make for the Thunder Mesa layout and the Goldfield and Calico. So all I really needed to do was clean it up, dust it off, and add a pair of 1x2 cleats to hold the Christmas layout in place. You see, my goal is to bring the Santa Fe and St. Nick home for the holidays this year, where it will become a part of our annual Christmas decor.
Okay, the first thing I have to do is get this thing out of storage where it's been languishing since about this time last year, about last Christmas. As I thought. I thought it'd be buried back in here, but that's not bad. We can work with this.
Okay, I've had this cover on it the whole time to keep the dust off. See how things look underneath. Get this off without damaging. Okay. Now we just need to lift it up and carry it out of here and put it in the back of the van. Ta-da! I love it when a plan comes together.
The power pack goes right back here. Need to run the wires back up to the phone again. It plugs in right here. And then just bring the power cord up this other hole. And that goes right there. Perfect. All right, I got the power hooked up. Just doing a quick lighting test. Make sure everything still works before I put the structures back into place. All right, now I can add the train. But before I do that, I need to clean all the track with some odorless mineral spirits. I've got a piece of t-shirt wrapped around a wine cork for my track cleaner. Works great. Yeah, look at the gunk that's taken off. And you can't even see the dust that is taking off along with that oxidation. Trains run a lot better when the track is clean. Got the same Bachmann 440 that I used last year. And then I've got these colorful roundhouse model Santa Fe coaches. If you're not familiar with how a passenger train like this is set up, usually it goes just like this. You have the baggage car right behind the locomotive, followed by a combination car if you have one of those. And we've got the standard coach and the observation car. I'm going to bring up the rear. The reason the trains are set up this way is that the highest paying passengers would be the furthest back in the train from the locomotive smoke. You see, the smoke is going to be a lot closer to the baggage car and the combine, so the further back you go, the more comfortable it is for passengers. That was the thinking anyway. Now, right away you might notice that the stand places the layout pretty high above the floor. It's about 50 inches, as a matter of fact, right at track level. That might seem kind of tall, but there are actually a couple of pretty good reasons for this. First of all, I like my layouts pretty high up, usually at least 4 feet above the floor. The Thunder Mesa layout is 52 inches above the floor at main track level. And that's so I can view things from, just above eye level. The second and probably more important reason is that we have 2 large dogs, and they don't pay particular attention to, where their tails are wagging. So it seemed to be a sensible precaution to place the layout up high and out of harm's way. Now down here under the layout, you can see where everything has been plugged in. I've just zip tied an extension cord here to the stand, and then I have the DC transformers for the 9-volt system, for the lights, for the structures, and this one is for the Kato power pack. You can see I've also added some illuminated pine garland around the edges of the layout. That adds kind of a festive holiday touch and also ties it in visually with the Christmas tree, which is right next to it. Now, all of the components of the layout survive being in storage quite well. The one exception is the Bachmann 440 locomotive. These models have silicone traction tires on 2 of the drivers. And here in Arizona, in this dry climate, they tend to basically dry out and crumble into dust in a relatively short period of time. And unfortunately, that's just what's happened here. So I've removed the remaining broken bits of the traction tires from the wheels. You can see the grooves in this front pair of drivers where they're supposed to go. But unfortunately now, the locomotive doesn't have the traction to pull a train around the layout, or even itself for that matter. Now, Bachmann does sell replacement traction tires for these locomotives in the parts department of their website, and I've ordered some. But there's not much hope of them getting here before Christmas, so I might have to bring in a different locomotive to pinch hit during the holiday season. As a matter of fact, I think we'll bring in the Lily Bell for the time being. This is a model of Walt Disney's live steam locomotive that ran on his backyard railroad. You can go see the real thing at the Walt Disney Family Museum in San Francisco, or you can see a replica of it at the Main Street station at Disneyland. And this is kind of the engine that started it all, that eventually led to the building of Disneyland. The CK Holiday at Disneyland and the E.P. Ripley locomotives are more or less based on it. Some people say they're scaled up versions, but there's more to it than that. Anyway, this is kind of a collectible model. I haven't run it in a long time. It's an old school Bachmann locomotive. It's a much older tooling than the one with the faulty traction tires, but straight DC, no DCC, no sound or anything like that. And we'll see how it runs. I have to run it quite a bit faster than I would prefer in order for it to smooth out. This is one of the old tender drive models, where it's got a shaft going between the tender and the locomotive to turn the drive wheels.
They literally don't make them like that anymore. Eyeballing. Yeah, it looks like Christmas. Well, that'll work in a pinch.
I still want to do a little bit more on the layout this year. And with a layout that's nearly finished like this one, the question becomes, what does it need? Looking at the structures here, I can see right away that something they definitely need is some signage. That was something I meant to do last year, but simply ran out of time before Christmas. So now I think I'll be adding some signs to at least some of the buildings on the layout.
So these Walthers Cornerstone Merchants Row kits that I used for most of the structures on the layout come with these this nice selection of signboards that you can use, and that's kind of cool. They also come with a whole bunch of printed signs and water slide decals, which is a really nice touch. Unfortunately, all of the signs are a little bit too modern. In fact, they're way too modern for the Santa Fe and St. Nick. The buildings themselves, date probably from turn of the century, early 20th century, but all of the signs they provide are very mid-century, 1950s, 1960s looking, and I wanted something that was a little more custom, a little more period looking than that. So I decided to create some of my own signs for these buildings. Plus, I had specific uses, specific names in mind. What I did was, what I figured out is, these are some pretty intricate shapes. I'm not using all of these. I'm just using a few of them, picking and choosing. But in order to create signs that fit on these signboards, what I figured out is that I could just scan this whole sprue of signboards, just put it on my bed scanner and scan it at 300 dpi. And then I could go into a photo editing program like Adobe Photoshop or Affinity Photo, which is my preferred software these days, Affinity Photo 2, and create signs right on top of the scanned image at the same DPI. You scan them at 300 DPI, then you create the signs in the program at 300 DPI, and then you print them out at 300 DPI on photo quality paper at the highest resolution you can, and having everything at the same size, the same DPI assures that everything will fit perfectly when you put it all together. So off of this sprue, I'm going to be using this large signboard. Cut these out. And then this rounded top sign down here. Now on these, you want to, when you cut them off the sprue, if you want to use the posts to mount them on the structure, you don't want to cut it, close to the sign. You want to cut it back here on the edge of the sprue. And then you'll have these posts to mount the signs with right on the structure like that. Now clean these up a little bit, clean up the edges, and we'll get some paint on them. Now, just as a primer coat on these, I'm going to use some Rust-Oleum tan camo. Dries really flat and really fast. Now, while that dries, I can start cutting out the signs that I created. Get those ready to go. Made about twice as many of them here as I need, just in case I mess up. It's a good idea to start with a sharp new number 11 blade in your hobby knife. When I made these signs in Affinity Photo on my computer, I did, I did some research into historic signs from the era. I'm also trying to depict a specific hotel franchise, which was associated with the Santa Fe Railroad. You know, get fonts that were close, at least, in the right neighborhood, in the right era. All of that information is available online too. You know, you can just Google period fonts and it'll show you, you know, what was common in this decade or that decade. Now I want to go and paint the edges of these signs. Like a 000 brush here. I'm using some Vallejo flat green on this one. Just try to get a color that's close. It doesn't have to be exact. When in doubt, go a shade darker or something like this. This is just so the edges of the paper aren't going to show. Give away the trick, and always work from the back. Now on this one, using some flat black, the sign is actually printed in a really dark blue-gray, but flat black is close enough for this. The printing is so light on these Harvey House signs. I don't think I'm gonna bother to paint the edges on those. I don't think I need to. Now that the base coat is dry on these, I'm gonna paint the frames. This one I'm doing in Vallejo brass. That should make it pop nicely. I don't need to paint the whole sign, but I do want to come in a little bit on the edges. And then for the Fred Harvey signs, I do a flat green. Okay, I think I'm about ready to start putting these together. Get some Eileen's tacky glue here. I'm going to dilute that with some water so I can spread it on with a brush. You don't want to get it so wet that it's going to curl the paper. It's kind of a balancing act. Just enough water to be able to spread it with a brush. You could also use a spray adhesive here, but it seemed kind of like overkill. Let's drop that down in the frame. Press it into place. Now for Martini's Place, Italian Ristorante e Bar, I opted, apologies for my terrible Italian there. I opted to leave the sign frame natural tan that I painted it. Martini's Place. I brush the glue in like this and try to make sure there's no big globs anywhere, that it's a nice even coat, and that I'm getting all the way out to the edges. Also trying really hard not to get it on the front of the sign. And then I want to paint these sign supports, these pegs, flat black. Now before I install the signs, I want to add some snow on the tops of them. It's just easier to do it this way than once they're in place. And for the snow, once again, I'm using some Woodland Scenics Flex Paste. You just dab that on. Same thing I used on the roofs here and above some of the doors and windows. Very carefully come down along the bottom edge of the sign also. While that's still wet, sprinkle on some of this Woodland Scenics soft flake snow. That just gives it a little bit of more snow texture, a little sparkle to it. I think we can go ahead and start installing these now. Going to use a little bit of CA. think we'll start with Martini's place. Right above the door. Murphy's Law when it comes to crazy glue, super glue, cyanoacrylate, is that it never sticks the first time unless the piece is on crooked. And I'll do the old building and loan, the Bailey Brothers building and loan. And I know we're a long, long way from Bedford Falls, New York here, but I couldn't resist. Both the Bailey Brothers building and loan and, of course, Martini's are from the holiday classic, the Christmas classic, It's a Wonderful Life. Jimmy Stewart, Donna Reed. Great, great classic movie. One we watch pretty much every holiday season. So had to have that in there. Maybe it's a chain. Maybe there's more than one. Building and loan. Now for the signs on the hotel, I have to drill some holes for these support posts. I need to mark where those are going to go. Get this centered right here. I want it up on the roof so you'll be able to see it above the water tower on the layout. I've got a bit here, which I matched up to the sides of those pegs. Now a drop of CA in each of these holes. I didn't go all the way through. I didn't want to go all the way through. Just down about 1/16 of an inch. So the idea here is that this structure is one of the legendary Harvey houses that were all along the Santa Fe Railroad out here in the West. Fred Harvey was a concessionaire with the Santa Fe, and he ran these actually quite nice hotels that were often adjacent to the station or very close to the railway station. They always had a nice restaurant, nice place, just a nice place for travelers to rest and stay. And there are a few examples still left out here that you can check out. I mean, if you want to see what one of these old Harvey houses was really like, the El Tovar Hotel at the south rim of Grand Canyon is an old Harvey house. And there's one out in Winslow, Arizona called the La Posada, which is probably one of the most beautifully restored of the old Harvey houses. You can check that out. Really worth a train trip out to see it, actually. Obviously, there are quite a few more signs and details and other things I could add to these structures, but I think we're going to wrap it up for this project. I've got to save some stuff to do next Christmas, right? But wait, there's actually one more little project I want to take care of before we call it a day. Imagine my surprise when I got home and checked the mail yesterday and found this envelope from Bachman Industries in my mailbox. Yes, these are the traction tires that I ordered, and somehow they actually arrived on time before Christmas. And given the usual reliability of deliveries in our area, it's kind of a Christmas miracle. So now I thought I would take a minute or two and show you how I replace a set of these. So I've got the locomotive on the workbench here, and what I need to do is remove this screw that's holding the drive rods onto the wheel so I can move those drive rods out of the way and get the traction tire on there. And these screws don't have any heads, they're just flat, so you have to kind of get in there and get them started, and then I'm turning them with a pair of tweezers, get it off of here, In the old days, these were slot-headed screws, but these look better because they don't have the slot heads, but they are a little bit harder to get off. Unfortunately, I scratched it a little bit with the tweezers trying to get it off of there, which is an occupational hazard. All right, let's not lose that. Put it in there for now. Okay, now I should be able to just push these rods out of the way, pull them up off of there, just like that. Now these traction tires are kind of like just little rubber bands. In fact, I've heard that you can use those dentist rubber bands that people have in their braces in place of these in a pinch. I haven't tried that myself, so I can't speak to how efficient that is. But what I need to do now is get it down in this groove and then stretch it all the way around the wheel. I've also made sure to go back in and look and see that I got all of the little tiny bits of the old traction tire, the broken bits off of there. So I'm going to start down on the bottom of the wheel. Make sure I get that down in the groove. Take my screwdriver and just kind of stretch it around. There we go. All the way around. I know it's hard to see what I'm doing here. I'm just trying to get it down there in the groove so I can pull these screwdrivers out. One thing you really want to make sure is that it doesn't go in there twisted or anyway. You want to make sure it's flat, and you don't want any bubbles or anything like that or twists in it, because that's going to make your locomotive waddle down the track. Going all the way around, making sure it's down there, seated properly in the groove with a tiny little flathead screwdriver. Now we can put the drive rods back on. By the way, the drive rod coming from the cylinder goes on the outside. Not all locomotives are created equal. Like I said, in some of these there'd be a slotted screw there. On some, I know in some small N-scale locomotives, it's just a press fit. And then you want to screw this down, but you really don't want it to be any more than hand tight. You don't want to, torque it down on there. Just finger tight. All right, now I can flip her over and do the other side. Be real careful not to bend the drive rods either. Don't want to bend those. You really need the two small screwdrivers to do this, because as you put it down in there on one side, the other side wants to come out. In there. Get in there, you. Again, take the flat side of the screwdriver and just go around and make sure it's properly seated down in that groove. Just want to turn that till it stops. You don't want to over torque it, like I said. You don't want to under torque it either, because then the screws can work themselves out over time and get lost somewhere in the roadbed, and all of a sudden you'll have the rods flapping around and you won't know what happened. And I'll just touch up those scratches with a tiny dab of Vallejo black metallic. And what always happens is I get these things here in the studio under the good light, and I see how dusty they are. So take a little compressed air and blow the dust off. And I've got a soft paintbrush that I use also to get the stubborn dust off of there. I'm not weathering the equipment I'm using on the Santa Fe and St. Nick, and there's actually an aesthetic reason for that. Believe it or not, in this case with this layout, I want that toy-like look. It's kind of a balancing act between scale modeling and toy trains. And I want that toy train look because this is a Christmas train, and to trigger that nostalgia of, you know, the train, the old Lionel around the tree on Christmas morning. So, all right, good old number 91 back on the track now. We'll see how we did. There you have it, the Santa Fe and St. Nick, home for the holidays. I want to thank you all so much for joining me today, and from my home to yours, a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Until next time, you can also follow us over on Instagram at thunder.mesa and check out the resources available on the Thunder Mesa Studio website at thundermesa.studio. As always, a huge shout out and thank you to our Patreon members who help to make these videos possible. Till next time, keep moving forward, my friends. Happy holidays. Adios for now.